Welcome to Jesus and Tim in Las Vegas. My name is Tim Behrens, and I am older than the state of Israel, but I think you should listen anyway, because today we have a wonderful book entitled How to Battle Depression and Suicidal Thoughts by Ray Comfort. Ray Comfort has put out some great movies, some great books, some great tracts. I love to hand out Science Confirms the Scripture, what science used to teach, what science now teaches, what the Bible taught all along. There's several examples of that. You can get that through livingwaters.com. But he has a tract that is a tract for people who don't like to hand out tracts. It's a movie gift card. And you give it to people, and you say, this is free for everyone who's standing in front of me in line at Walmart, assuming they're standing in front of you in line at Walmart, or behind me, or this is free for everybody who has a good-looking dog, whatever it takes to get it in their hands. And you say, here's 6 free movies for you, not at the theater, but online. And then what I say here in Las Vegas, the suicide capital, the secret suicide capital of the United States, where suicides are never reported unless it's murder-suicide, I say, if you know of anybody struggling with suicidal thoughts, this movie Exit is perfect for them. And you point to that, and I've had many people say, boy, I had a brother that just committed suicide, or my son, I had a man at a gas station say, my son committed suicide 2 weeks ago. So this is a great track to get into the hands of friends and strangers. And like I said, it's a track for people who don't like to hand out tracts. But accompanying that Exit movie is a short booklet that Ray Comfort has written. It's entitled How to Battle Depression and Suicidal Thoughts. And I want to thank Ray for introducing it last week. And I am, by the way, in St. Louis. I'll be going into some rough areas with a friend, Dan Phillips, and Jim Honer and I. But would appreciate your prayers. But I have found that people are more open to gospel tracts in the rough areas than they are in the wealthy areas. I think Jesus even said something. It's harder for a rich man. What was that? But people are very open in those areas, I've found. And we want to go where, well, get into the world and preach the gospel to everybody. That's our goal. So let me start reading Ray Comfort's How to Battle Depression and Suicidal Thoughts. And Ray Comfort is the best-selling author of over 80 books and the producer of several award-winning movies seen by millions. This book is a companion to Exit, a timely and powerful film about chronic depression and suicide. You can freely watch it and his other movies on fullyfreefilms.com. That's fullyfreefilms.com. He writes, your eye suddenly catches the frightening sight of a man perched on the ledge of San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge, poised to jump. What do you say to him? In a sense, his life is in your hands. Such is the case when a caring bystander tries to convince a suicidal young man that his life has value and he has much to live for in this moving fictional account. Will the bystander be able to address the man's true needs and talk him down? Would you be able to offer a ray of hope and some comfort to someone without any? Includes helpful, hope-filled sidebars from the world's best counselor. And he writes here, the most frightening warning sign that someone is considering suicide is that there often are no signs. Read this book, then pass it on to those you love. How to Battle Depression and Suicidal Thoughts by Ray Comfort. Chapter 1, The Golden Gate Bridge. From his bird's-eye view, he peered into the foggy bay, as if his solution might be out there just beyond his sight. Why was he hesitating to take his life? All he had to do was lean forward from the railing and simply free fall into the treacherous depths below. Yet he felt compelled to stay as he did to jump. It wouldn't be painless, but it would be quick, and a lot less painful than this life, he figured. He felt so hopeless, with no more reason to live, and yet he wanted to. Oh, how he wanted to. I'm not a big fan of crowds. That's why I chose very early on a Tuesday morning, when there are some, well, very few tourists, to walk across the iconic Golden Gate Bridge. I wanted to get a good sunrise picture for an upcoming publication, and the bridge offered an ideal place from which to take the photo. The forecast hadn't mentioned fog, but typical for San Francisco, fog came from nowhere that particular morning. Pea soup. I was deciding whether to turn back or wait for it to clear when I noticed a shadowy figure in the fog about 20 feet from me. Someone had climbed over the steel railing and was perched precariously on a narrow ledge, and just as precariously on the edge of this life. The ledge was actually about a 30-inch wide beam spanning 220 feet above the icy gray waters of the San Francisco Bay. As I carefully approached, I saw it was a young man in his early to mid-20s with short blondish hair. I was fully aware that a sudden move or the wrong words from me could end up in tragedy, so I said a quick prayer for wisdom. I began by gently asking for his name, telling him mine and that I'm a Christian and would like to talk with him. He seemed startled by my approach, but he remained fixed in his spot. Is that some sort of stage name for people who need a ray of hope and a little comfort? He replied wryly. I assured him that it was my real name and that all I was asking was for him to listen. I'm aware that experts often say to get a suicidal person to talk, but I was afraid talking about his problems might prompt him to jump, and I didn't know how much time he would give me. So, funny as it may sound, I did want to give him a ray. Good. Even as difficult and painful as your circumstances are right now, you still have tremendous worth. I believe that I can give you some good reasons not to take your life, I said. I've already made up my mind. I'm going to jump. You can't tell me anything new that I haven't heard before, he informed me. And when I jump, what are you going to do? You're going to walk around a failure. Your little speech didn't work. Your little God solutions are irrelevant to the big problems that I have. I've got friends who died, and God didn't help them. What's your name? I gently prompted again. I'm not giving it to you. If you've already made up your mind to jump, you have nothing to lose by listening. Will you give me your word that you won't jump until you hear me out? Why should I give you my word? Okay, you don't know me, and you don't know what I'm going to say, I admitted. Will you let me tell you what happened to my friend's brother? I couldn't care less what happened to your friend about your stupid friend's stupid brother. I wasn't sure how to read his attitude, whether he was still on the verge of jumping or willing to listen, but every minute he continued to talk with me was giving me a ray of hope. I continued, my friend's name is Stuart Scott, and this actually happened in Utah in 2012. A group of masked men with knives took Stan, his younger brother, knocked him out, cut open his chest, and took out his heart. And no one did a thing to stop them. Seriously, that's one of the sickest things I've ever heard. There's so much evil in this life, he exclaimed, his agitation level rising. That's the kind of thing that gets me so depressed. Everywhere I look, I see nothing but horrible things happening. And so how is this supposed to make me change my mind about killing myself? As it stands, you think it was horrible, I quickly told him. You only think so because you're missing some vital information. What that did wasn't bad. What they did wasn't bad. It was good. Go ahead, Mr. Wise Guy. Change my mind, he mocked. They were surgeons. What do you mean? They were heart surgeons who put on their masks, took their scalpels, knocked the man out with anesthesia, cut open his chest, took out his diseased heart that was given him, and gave him a heart transplant. Those brilliant men saved his life. Oh, we said meekly. Oh, was right. Just 30 seconds ago, you thought that what they did was evil. But now, with the missing information, you've had a radical change of mind. Just 3 little words changed your mind from something being despicably evil to being wonderfully good. That little bit of information gave you another perspective so that you could see the truth. Okay, point made. What's that got to do with me standing on the edge of this bridge? Doesn't change my mind about jumping. I'm still going to do it. No, the point hasn't yet been made, I said. The point is you've made up your mind to take your life, but I'd like to share some information that will give you another perspective. Your life matters, but you think life isn't worth living because you're seeing your situation from your limited point of view. All I'm asking is that you listen to a few words that I believe are going to change everything for you. Will you please hear me out? Just let me run through the reasons that I believe will show you that what you're doing is the wrong thing to do. I don't mean morally wrong. I mean wrong in the sense of it not being in your best interest. Okay, I get it. If the information is as radical as you say it is, and it does change my perspective, I give you my word that I won't jump. But I don't think it's going to happen. Let's give it a try, I said with a sense of relief. But I need to know that you won't take offense at anything I say. This is because I'm going to talk about God and other things that may make you feel guilty. You make me laugh. I'm on the ledge of the Golden Gate Bridge about to jump. I've never felt this bad in all my life, and you think you're going to make me feel worse. He shook his head in disbelief and added in utter defeat, I've already felt guilty. I feel about as lone as anyone can get. There's no point and no purpose in existing any longer. And you know what? I don't even believe in God. I believe in science and reason. So you have an impossible task, but go ahead, do your thing. Thank you, I replied, greatly encouraged. I knew that nothing was impossible. Chapter 2. A Wicked Do-Nothing God. I had been standing on the bridge's walkway while the young man stood on the ledge about 3 feet below on the other side of the railing. Each time he answered me, it was without looking me in the eye. I wanted to make more of a connection with him, so I asked his permission to sit near him. If I couldn't talk him off the ledge just yet, I hoped to at least get near enough to sit down. That way, he'd be less likely to plunge off the bridge while we talked. He agreed. As I sat on the damp sidewalk and looked through a gap in the rail, he was turned slightly so that I could now see most of his face. Since you don't believe in God, let's start there, I began. It's tragic that there's been a recent revival in atheism, so that millions of young people like you have been taught to believe there's no evidence for the existence of God. Rather, they see what they think is evidence that God doesn't exist. Just look around at all the starving children, deadly earthquakes, and cancer that kills millions each year. Add to that all the evil that goes on in the world, and how can anyone think that there's a loving God who takes care of his creation? He eagerly chimed in, no, it's more like if there is a God, he's wicked to stand by and do nothing while evil is happening. What sort of father would allow his children to suffer horribly while he stands by and watches? Religion has nothing to help humanity. He was on a roll now and was becoming more animated. In fact, its existence has brought evil with it. We'd be better off without religion. Think of the thousands of children who've been molested by pedophile priests and all the simple-minded idiots who give money to rich, slick TV preachers. Religion is responsible for more wars than anything else in history. There's no way you can justify the existence of a loving God in the face of all this. What you're saying is true. These are legitimate arguments, I conceded. It was encouraging to hear him express his views, and these were thoughts that I had heard shared by countless people. There is evil in the world. It's overflowing with evil, but that doesn't deal with the premise of atheism. Atheism claims that there is no God, but you're just saying that if there is a God, he's evil. Let's say a man maintains that he built a skyscraper from the foundation to the 100th floor. He has the credentials and the experience and other buildings he could point to substantiate the fact that he built the skyscraper. Your argument is that the man is a thief and a liar, and therefore the building had no builder. That's an illogical leap. Whether the builder is morally good or bad is irrelevant. Every building has to have a builder. It can't build itself. You may be offended at God's seeming inaction when it comes to evil or at man's evil use of religion, I argued, but it doesn't negate the fact that we have this intellectual problem of the whole of nature in front of us. Where did it come from? It's scientifically impossible for it to have made itself. I thought you were going to offer me some evidence of God's existence, he scoffed as he turned toward me. I want something scientific, something I can hold on to. I don't want this blind faith believing in some invisible being in the sky when there is no evidence. Give me evidence, and I'll listen. The plentiful gray and white seagulls were cawing as they circled directly above us. They were probably just after a morning feed, an early morning feed, but I couldn't help seeing them as circling vultures, smelling death below. It was as they were goading him with jump, jump. Okay, I'll give you your scientific evidence, I began. Do you believe that a book could make itself? Do you believe that it could form its own pages filled with coherent information? There was nothing, then ink fell from nowhere onto paper that came from nowhere and not only formed itself into sensible sentences, but also into sequential page numbers on each page. More colorful ink formed itself into full-color photos of roses, sunsets, and hummingbirds. Then the book designed its own cover. Could a book make itself from nothing? Of course not. That's ridiculous, he said. That's right, it is. Utterly impossible. Are you familiar with DNA? Of course, he said. Scientists often refer to DNA as the book of life. It's not only filled with coherent information, but scientists describe it as having letters, forming paragraphs and chapters. And this isn't ordinary information, it's programming information. Your DNA is so complex that it defies human imagination. From the moment you were conceived, your DNA gave instructions on how to make your eyes, your ears, your skin, your hair, your blood type, your personality. Everything about you was written in your DNA from the moment you were conceived. Your point? What would you think of the mentality of someone who really believed that a physical book could make itself, I asked. To be politically incorrect, he'd be crazy. Nobody in his right mind would believe that a book could make itself. So here's my point. What would you think of the intellectual capacity of someone who really believed that DNA made itself? In other words, an atheist. To believe even for a moment that the unspeakably complex programming in DNA made itself makes the person who believes that a book created itself seem sane. Atheism is thoughtless. It is unscientific and senseless. Any rational human being who professes to be an atheist and says that DNA made itself has to be hiding something. They can't be serious. As I paused to take a breath, I wondered whether this was having an impact, but I couldn't see his expression clearly. So there is your scientific proof of the existence of an intelligent mind that brought everything into existence. It is outside the realm of possibility for nature to have made itself. He was quiet for several moments before responding. Okay, so I guess I'm not an atheist, he answered slowly. Big deal. It doesn't change anything, he added a little more defiantly. It just leaves you with the problem of who this creator is, why he doesn't say something about himself, and why he allows evil. Good point. That is a problem. In case you just tuned in, we're reading from the book How to Battle Depression and Suicidal Thoughts by Ray Comfort, and it's published by Genesis Publishing Group. It's a companion book to the movie Exit, and you can see the movie Exit by going to fullyfreefilms.com. You can see it free right now, fullyfreefilms.com. Let's continue with Chapter 3, The Problem of Evil. I hadn't planned to be out this long. I suppose neither of us did, and a cool breeze cut through my jacket and brought a chill. My hands were freezing. I wanted to put them in my pockets as we talked, but I didn't want to look even slightly casual. It was miserable, wet and cold, but the conversation was warming up. Okay, so now we're back to the character of our Creator. Why would a loving God allow evil? Everywhere we look in the world, we see evil. It often comes to us as breaking news. A police officer has been shot to death. A white officer has been arrested because he killed an unarmed black youth. A young girl has been viciously raped and left for dead, and the attacker has never been brought to justice. These sorts of things happen every day and are part of human existence. There's evil everywhere. I continued to reason with him. But here's the question that needs to be asked. How do we know that evil is evil? What is our point of reference? Is the murder of a cop wrong? If so, why is it wrong? Is rape wrong? How about theft? If so, who says it's wrong? Society? Does rape then become right if society legalizes it? Is murder moral if it's sanctioned by society? If a government under someone like Hitler allows the killing of what they call undesirables, is that morally okay? If society in future generation legalizes pedophilia, does pedophilia become morally acceptable? If not, why not? Societal morality is a slippery slope. It is morality that separates man from the beasts, I explained. Humans have an innate knowledge of right and wrong, and that's why we set up court systems. We have a conscience, a built-in knowledge of what is good and what is evil. Where did that come from? Some of it is obviously shaped by society, but that doesn't explain why every society navigates in some way by the human conscience. The existence of evil needs a reference point, but that still doesn't deal with your problem of God being evil because of his inaction, the young man argued. If he was good, he wouldn't let people starve to death, let little kids get cancer, or let young girls be raped and murdered. So you've convinced me that there is a creator, but I'm convinced that the creator is evil, and I don't want to have anything to do with him. He even stood by and did nothing while his chosen people were slaughtered by the Nazis. So much for your loving God, he sneered. Actually, the problem is bigger than God's inaction than the Actually, the problem is bigger than God's inaction with the Holocaust. If you look at the record of the Bible, he also let his people suffer in Egypt and in Babylon. And not only that, if you look at the Christian message, he let his son be crucified. You may have heard that when Jesus was on the cross, he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Isn't that evidence that God is unloving? But don't be too quick to come to any conclusions. Remember how a little information can give you a completely new perspective and change your mind in seconds. Let me ask you a question, he interjected as another cold breeze blew and sent a chill down my spine. Do you own a house? Have a well-paying job? A family who loves you? Yes, I nodded. I do have a wife and kids who love me. I have a good job, and we've had our own home for about 20 years. It's not a mansion, but it keeps the rain out. Why do you ask? Because I have none of those things. When I was 14, my dad ran off with another woman, abandoning his family and ripping my mom's heart out. I haven't seen him since. After my parents divorced, my mom shacked up with some guy who started out nice, but turned out to be a no-good drunk. He spent all her money, and we lost our house because we couldn't keep up with the payments. I hate my father for doing that to us. But that's no reason to want to kill yourself, right? It isn't. My problem started when I got some girl pregnant a couple of years ago. We were both at a party one night, half drunk. I didn't care about her, and so when I found out, I pressured her to have an abortion, he confided. It was no big deal at the time, just to pay out a few $100 and the problem goes away. Someone told me that she ended up cutting her wrists. She didn't die, but she's apparently in some psych ward somewhere. When I heard that, I began to have an overwhelming feeling of guilt. My conscience was eating at me. He paused as if weighing whether to continue. Then he went on. I started using drugs, just recreational at first to numb the pain, but pretty soon I got addicted. And a few weeks later, I got canned at my job for missing too much work. So I started stealing from anyone I could, and then dealing to keep my habit going. I got caught for possession and had to do 3 months in jail, followed by 12 weeks of counseling. What a waste of time. Nobody cares. What about your family? I'm sure you have people who care about you. We'll hear his response next week as we continue in chapter 3. Reading from Ray Comfort's book, How to Battle Depression and Suicidal Thoughts. And Dr. Michelle Bankston, PhD, ABPP, clinical psychologist and author, said, I find myself at a loss for words. Excellent. You need to get this book. It's a short book, and for people who don't like to read long books, it's the perfect book for them. You can get it through livingwaters.com, and Ray has a lot of wonderful books and tracks, and I use especially the movie gift cards often, but go to fullyfreefilms.com and watch the movie Exit. It's that movie dealing with suicide, and get this book for you and your friends. How to Battle Depression and Suicidal Thoughts. I'm Tim Behrens. I'll be back next week, Lord willing. I'm in St. Louis right now, handing out gospel tracts with friends and seeing family and friends as well. And so I'd appreciate your prayers that the Lord will continue to use us while we're going. Thank you so much. You can hear today's broadcast by going to Jesus and Tim in Las Vegas on YouTube. Brandon will have it up there, and our newsletter is at jesusandtim.tk. Thank you so much. And remember 1 Corinthians 15:58. I'll let you look it up. God bless you, my friend. Have a great day in the Lord. Bye-bye.
Function, let me function till the break of gas for my Ford. Keep me trucking for the Lord. Give me gas for my Ford. I pray, hallelujah. Give me gas for my Ford.